The Wall Street Journal loved low-energy Jeb Bush and a succession of other people as they rapidly disappeared from sight, finally falling in line with me after I easily knocked them out, one by one. We're in exactly the same position now. They will keep coming after us, MAGA, but ultimately, we will win. Put America first and make America great again. Oh, by the way, did you see what Benny Johnson on Real America's Voice said on the Charlie Kirk show? Benny Johnson he's like, I don't know him outside of the guy on the right who like talks about being a meme guy or something. I don't know. Like, I remember he's like, I'm a professional shitposter or something along those lines. Well, he was on Charlie Kirk's show and he was trying to give analysis as to why the Republicans lost. And I wanted you guys to listen to this amazing midterm analysis from Benny Johnson.
I got a question for you. Charlie may want to avoid the finger pointing right now, but I kind of don't. And I think that it's time for people to accept the reality of the civil war inside of the Republican Party. It does seem as though, talking about doing nothing, man, I have never seen anything more flaccid and linguini-spined than the way that the corporate GOP approached this very winnable election. Now, I think there's a lot of synthesis to be done, but you touched on McCarthy. I thought it was wild the way they rolled out this plan for America. I saw nothing about it. Nothing. I am obsessed with following the news. I got an entire team of young kids, 20 years old. All they do is look at clips online. Never once did I get a clip about Kevin McCarthy going based, going flamethrower, Kevin McCarthy rip-roaring. Never once. I didn't get a single clip that, like, the corporate GOP did a single fire thing in this election. And we cover this day in and day out. We have the best damn people on the internet covering the hottest clips out there, and we go nuts for it. And if Kevin McCarthy did something based, I would have covered it. I have nothing against it. But I didn't get a single clip, Rich. Nothing.
20 seconds, Rich, and we'll talk over the break.
God bless you.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, God bless you. They released, I thought we were going to break. They released that mimic of a contract with America. The website was a joke, a disaster. It went up too early. It was amateur hour. Then when they finally rolled it out, it looked like it was written in 1994, and then they took it down, and they never pushed it anyway. You have Republican voters being persecuted by the FBI and the government, and he says nothing.
Rich, stay right there.
Okay, so there's been a lot of coping and seething about this election, but the idea that the GOP didn't meme enough, they didn't go based and red-pilled and post clips everywhere. Obviously, we didn't see much about the GOP platform, but that's also because the GOP platform isn't that good. It's against a $15 minimum wage. It's against ending the drug war. It's against the legalization of marijuana. It's a bunch of old corporate right-wing nonsense. Much of it is just the same stuff they've been serving for the last 50 years, but have been the fundamental, like policy blocks of the Republican Party. They aren't changing it up. They aren't introducing the policies that Americans want. And so no matter how much he thinks they should have memed harder on it, like, let's be for real, no amount of saying the word based is going to make the drug war look good in the eyes of the American people after so many failures. And so I don't understand what Benny means here. Like, did they need to meme better? Did they need to talk about their platform more? Quite frankly, the Republicans don't have a good platform, and it's not something that's being sold to the American people. And the stuff the Republicans did holler about, because they understood, maybe even they understood this, that their platform isn't what's going to be their selling point for them. What they did is basically just go after the Biden administration. Constant attacks, constant attacks, constant attacks. They didn't offer an alternative, right? They didn't offer an alternative because the alternative was crap. And the alternative that would have been needed to be offered to beat Biden, which talks about, like, hey, would be going further than Biden on child tax credits, would be going further on Biden when it comes to things like marijuana decriminalization and lowering the Schedule 1 status to marijuana legalization. And not the release of 6,000 prisoners in federal prison, but release of all prisoners in jail for nonviolent drug offenses. That's the type of stuff we would need to see to actually beat Biden, in my opinion. But instead, what they offered was drama and nonsense about the 2020 election being stolen. That's what you saw from Carrie Lake's campaign, and that's why there's a decent chance she's going to lose, and the odds look like she's going to lose right now. That's what you saw from Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania. That's what you saw from Dr. Oz, who, during the end of his campaign, had Trump on his shoulder trying to use him to get over the finish line. That's what you saw from the Secretary of State candidate in Arizona that's doomed to lose. That's what you saw from a lot of these people. That 2020 nonsense isn't going to work. It's not popular with the American people. Whining about how you lost an election and trying to make everybody believe, oh no, I totally won, guys. I totally won. That being like a knuckle-dragging window licker loser who can't accept that he lost, that doesn't work with people. We don't like losers in the United States, but we like sore losers even less. And it wasn't a winning strategy. And somehow, through Republican incompetence and Biden during the end of these 2 years, getting through things like not only the child tax credit earlier and the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, but getting through student debt relief, getting through these types of policies, which are unbelievably popular, him talking about the decriminalization of marijuana, him talking about lowering the Schedule 1 status, him releasing 6,000 people from federal prison for nonviolent drug offenses, him recommending to state governments across the country to lower the Schedule 1 status of marijuana. That's the type of stuff the American people want. That's the type of stuff the American people have been dying for. To see him succeed so heavily when it comes to support for Ukraine. To see America's foreign policy go out into the world as to use our military and our military might in some way when it comes to sending the aid over, and to be picking up W's left and right. I mean, sending aid to Ukraine is overwhelmingly popular due to Biden's policies. We've seen massive recapturing of territory in Ukraine, right? 4 months ago, the popularity of sending aid to Ukraine was 53% saying we need to send more aid to Ukraine. Now it's 66%. 66% as of 1 month ago, due to the W's Ukraine is picking up, in large part because of the Biden administration aid. And that's a foreign policy priority. That's something that Biden cares about, but the Republicans have not been stumping on this election. Democrats have shown themselves to be more of a party of Ukraine than the Republican Party has, after Kevin McCarthy went out and said to the American public, you know, in a Republican-controlled House, we are not going to be writing a blank check to Ukraine. But it looks like the American people want to keep writing checks to Ukraine. I think that is part of the reason. It is a part of the reason the Republicans lost. But a bigger thing that Benny Johnson hits on here, outside of the ridiculousness of like the memes, we need the memes, is the idea of Republican civil war started. And you want to know what? A Republican civil war has started. It has started. It has started, and we need to acknowledge it, because this is about to be glorious. This is about to be fantastic. We're about to see some of the best, not only political mastery, when it comes to the condition of the Biden administration. We want a Republican civil war. We want the party to be killing each other. We want the party to tear each other apart. We want the party to be divided and unable to put up a stiff resistance in the House. We want to be able to make it easier to pick off Republicans in the House and get them to vote on some bipartisan legislation, like the burn pit stuff that Biden got through and the Republicans tried to sabotage at the last second because they were angry that the Democrats outmaneuvered them. We want that Republican civil war. It's going to keep them ununited, and it's going to make it harder for them to stop the Democrats' agenda and to go through with any of the nonsense they want to get through on their agenda. Which, if we keep the Senate, it's not even going to be a problem anyway. Plus, we have veto power in the presidency. By the way, keeping the Senate, great for court appointments. Just want to point that out. So that's the first part of it that's great about it. The second part is, if Biden and Ron DeSantis, which is what the writing everyone sees on the wall, really go at it, really clobber each other, really just murder each other, just like stabbing each other in the public sphere, no matter who wins, they're going to go into the 2024 election as a weaker candidate, especially if Trump wins. Because I do think DeSantis has a better chance of beating Biden than Donald Trump. I 100% believe that. I think Trump is too unhinged. I think people seeing the writing on the wall, and you can see the GOP civil war beginning, and it of course is Donald Trump that is firing the first shots. So let's go through some of these messages from Donald Trump, who is going in on Ron DeSantis, or as Trump is starting to call him, Ron DeSanctimonious, in the mainstream Republican Party and news corporations. Let's read some of these Donald Trump messages as the firing volleys of the Republican Civil War are fired. Now that the midterms are over and a success, News Corp, which is Fox, the Wall Street Journal, and the no longer great New York Post, Bring Back Coal, is all in for Governor Ron DeSanctimonious, an average Republican governor with a great public relations, who didn't close up his state, but did, unlike other Republican governors, whose overall numbers for a Republican were just average, middle of the pack, including COVID, who has the average of advantage of the sunshine, where people from badly run states up north would go no matter who the governor was, just like I did. Ron came to me in desperate shape in 2017. He was politically dead, losing in a landslide to a very good agricultural commissioner, Adam Putnam. who was loaded up with cash and great poll numbers. Ron had low approval, bad polls, and no money, but he said that if I would endorse him, he could win. I didn't know Adam, so I said, let's give it a shot, Ron. When I endorsed him, it was as though, to use a bad term, a nuclear weapon went off. Years later, there were the exact words that Adam Putnam used in describing Ron's endorsement. He said, I went from having it made with no competition to immediately getting absolutely clobbered after your endorsement. I then got Ron by the star of the Democratic Party, Andrew Gillum, who was later revealed to be a crackhead. By having two massive rallies, I like the random just shot at Andrew Gillum for his addiction. By having two massive rallies with tens of thousands of people at each one. I also fixed his campaign, which had completely fallen apart. I was all in for Ron, and he beat Gillum. But after the race, when votes were being stolen by the corrupt election process in Broward County, Ron was going down tens of thousands of votes a day. Oh, by the way, this is nonsense. Along with now Senator Rick Scott, I sent in the FBI and the U.S. attorneys, and the ballot theft immediately ended, just prior to them running out of votes necessary to win. I stopped his election from being stolen. And now, Ron DeSantis is playing games. The Fanks News asks him if he's going to run for president if Trump runs. And he says, I'm only focused on the governor's race. I'm not looking into the future. Well, in terms of loyalty and class, that's really not the right answer. This is just like 2015 and 16, a media assault collusion when Fox News fought me to the end until I won. And then they couldn't have been nicer or more supportive. The Wall Street Journal loved low-energy Jeb Bush and a succession of other people as they rapidly disappeared from sight, finally falling in line with me after I easily knocked them out, one by one. We're in exactly the same position now. They will keep coming after us, MAGA, but ultimately we will win. Put America first and make America great again. My God. Dude, I could submit this as an essay in high school. Like, he had a lot he had to say. He wrote a story there. And this is hardcore. Like, he's going in on Ron DeSantis. And I gotta say, quite honestly, before we read any of the more messages and videos we're getting out of this incoming Republican Civil War, Trump is possibly right. I mean, I don't want to make the Jeb Bush comparison to Ron DeSantis because I don't think Jeb Bush has the same appeal to the right as Ron DeSantis has. But Jeb Bush went into 2015-2016 election as the governor of Florida, who was overwhelmingly popular with Floridians, according to polling, and has been seen as an up-and-coming star in the Republican Party, only to be knocked down by Donald Trump and his onslaught of insults and attacks. And Donald Trump dressed down not only Jeb Bush, who has almost the same record as Ron DeSantis, and I think even Ron DeSantis might be in a worse position because Jeb Bush has other people he could rely on from the start. Ron DeSantis, a lot of his election victories are probably in large part due to Donald Trump. Donald Trump really helped him win against Andrew Gillum and helped him win in that Republican primary. So I do think that the idea that Trump is just going to fall over now and it's the age of Ron DeSantis, a lot of people are just taking this as fact now. Even some Republicans. And I got to tell you, I can't believe I have to say this because I'm usually the person that gets told this to. Don't underestimate Trump. The dude's not very intelligent, but he's a campaign machine. He didn't just dress down Jeb Bush. He dressed down Jeb Bush. He dressed down Marco Rubio. He dressed down Rand Paul. He dressed down Ben Carson, Chris Christie, everyone. Ted Cruz. All of the people who were supposed to be the new stars of the Republican Party, all got dressed down by Trump. Jeb Bush, we haven't seen Jeb Bush since he got smashed. He went from front runner to almost completely politically irrelevant in one campaign after being the governor of Florida. A relatively okay approval rating governor of Florida too. And then we saw the general against Hillary, and against all odds he won. And so all I'm trying to say is that Do we know that Ron DeSantis is special? People are going to say, well, you're seeing Fox turning on Trump. Fox many times turned on Trump during the 2015-2016 election, where they were pumping up Marco Rubio or Ben Carson or eventually Ted Cruz when he was the last one running against him. They pumped up the opponents until the end, until it was basically inevitable because they didn't think Trump could win. And so just because you're seeing Fox shows turning against him does not mean, or Fox commentators or some politicians, does not mean necessarily that Donald Trump now has lost the right and he's going to lose. He has overcome steeper odds before, so don't count him out. I will say, ever since he was elected the nominee of the Republicans in 2015 to go into the 2016 election, this is the most politically weak he has been after his candidates like Dr. Oz, who he handpicked in the primary, or how he handpicked Carrie Lake. His handpicked candidates in really vital races ended up coming up short against better opposition and better candidates because they were bad candidates, and Donald Trump put his back behind people who, compared to the other candidate that could have run against Fetterman, had a worse chance of winning. And there is a chance, definitely since, Fetterman went through a stroke during his campaign, that if the other candidate, the more mainstream Republican candidate, would have run instead of Dr. Oz, the person that Donald Trump handpicked and won by a hair in the primary, we didn't even know if he was going to be the winner coming out of the primary. They were fighting a brutal campaign back and forth there. It was Donald Trump who tipped the scale and chose Dr. Oz instead of the mainstream Republican candidate. And so, yeah, that loss in Pennsylvania is largely up to Donald Trump, and Republicans are reeling with that fact, and they're also learning that this red wave was probably cucked in a way by Republican messaging being too much about 2020 when Americans don't like to listen to whiners, and culture war nonsense. Now, I don't know if they've realized the culture war nonsense, but I do think they're starting to realize that the 2020 stuff running on that was a disaster for their campaign, was a disaster for their platform. Speaking of Fox News shows turning on him, I think we have one, don't we? I think we have one. Here is it. Here is it right here. A call from Fox News, one of their hosts, openly telling Donald Trump not to run again. Look at this.
Great points made here. There's no question. But some of the Trump-backed candidates really struggled, and some of it had to do with the election denialism. I wrote an open letter to Donald Trump this morning on my Substack that, sorry, Kaylee, it says, please, Mr. President, don't run again.
You don't have to apologize to me. To be clear, I haven't declared I'm voting for any one person.
I'm just in respect to your service to the country. That's all. The only reason I say it. So, but aside from that, the day after the election, I tweeted out, it's abortion, stupid. And the reason is that so many young people were motivated and scared by the overturning. Legally, the overturning of Roe v. Wade was correct. But what the politicians made out of it and the hay that they made really inspired, I'm telling you this, really inspired a lot of voters. I live in Minnesota. The gubernatorial race came down to just attacking the Republican because he had said he wants to ban abortion. Take the word ban out of this. We can sit down and have an intellectual conversation.
Say everything besides, of course, her opinion on Roe v. Wade. Everything she's saying here is right, by the way. Donald Trump needs to not run again for the Republicans if they really want to win big in 2024, like strategically for them. And the abortion stuff really compromised them because the majority of Americans didn't want to ban abortion. And now we're seeing Republicans going out and trying to ban abortion. We're seeing little girls raped, forced to be made pregnant by these people. They didn't have a choice in the matter, being forced to flee Republican states to get abortion in other states. All because of their radical position on this issue. And are we surprised the Republicans really did that bad in the midterm? I mean, when you think about it, I think a lot of us just got caught up with some late polling and the Republican message that the economy is so inflated, everybody's going to vote for us because of the inflated economy. Even though Joe Biden isn't even the main cause necessarily of the inflation, and we can go to places like Great Britain, and they have higher inflation rates than the United States, and that's run by conservatives. That's run by Rishi Sunak of the Conservative Party. He's the prime minister. So I do think she's right in her analysis, though.
About the continuum of life from, conception to the end of a term and figure out what makes sense. But when you start telling people you want to ban abortion, you are now alienating a big chunk of conservatives who would otherwise vote for it.
It's true. It's 100% true. And let me tell you, these aren't the only shots fired in the Republican Civil War. We've got another one fired from Donald Trump at Youngkin, the governor of Virginia that was elected in a special election in Virginia. It was a huge loss for the Democratic Party. It was really sad to see, and a lot of people thought it was going to be like a message. It was basically the first shot going into the midterms, and it was going to define what happened in the midterms. And I think this election actually colored people's glasses and made them think that the red wave was coming, even though it didn't. And this is Donald Trump talking about Governor Glenn Youngkin, who he was supportive of, by the way. He's firing more shots. The first volley is most certainly from Donald Trump. Youngkin, now that's an interesting take. Sounds Chinese, doesn't it? He makes up nicknames for people he wants to insult. And even people he likes, but it'll be more positive nicknames for people he likes. This isn't how you spell Governor Glenn Youngkin's name. It's spelled young, like as in a young person, and kin, and then K-I-N at the end, I think. He spelled it to make it sound Chinese for some reason. And then he had to give color commentary about how it sounds Chinese. Now that's an interesting take. Sounds Chinese, doesn't it? Anyway, Youngkin in Virginia couldn't have won without me. I endorsed him. Did a very big Trump rally for him from telephone. Got MAGA to vote for him, or he couldn't have come close to winning. But he knows that and admits it. Besides having a hard time with Dems in Virginia, but he'll get it done. Ooh. He's like sending, it's almost like a warning shot to other Republicans, or, hey, you're still loyal to me. Good guy, good guy. Hey, look at me. I'm the big winner. I get victories. He's trying to continue the message that Trumpism and Make America Great Again, MAGA, is still a winning strategy for the Republican Party. Anyway, moving on from that, I want to go on to Ben Shapiro and what Ben Shapiro thinks the solution is, because he's not happy with the result. He's not happy whatsoever. So what does he have to say, Ben Shapiro? He says heads should roll.
This was not only not a red wave, it was not a red tide, it was barely a red trickle. Barely a red trickle, which means heads should roll. When your football team is expected to go 16-0, it's one thing if your football team then proceeds to go 14-2 or 10-6. If your football team proceeds to go 8-8, people get fired. The entire coaching staff, the entire leadership team in the Republican Party needs to go, and it needs to go now. Now, I spoke to the Republican House caucus back in 2021, and I said to them, if somehow you fail to take the House, given the conditions that you have been given, every one of you ought to lose your jobs. Well, they're
I don't know if I believe that or if that's something you made up in the shower, but who knows?
barely going to take the House. And I mean barely.
The funny thing is that's still not guaranteed. It's a few days later and it's still not guaranteed. It's likely that they're going to retake the House, but David Trone just winning in Maryland, there is a small path to victory, but it would also mean beating Lauren Boebert, and her opponent is just slightly down by like a few hundred votes. It would take a lot of very like by the hair victories by Democrats to keep the House. So it's likely that Republicans take it.
Going to take the House. The current estimate suggests that Republicans are going to win somewhere between 8 and 15 seats in the House. They started off with 212. That means they will end up on the low end at 220 out of 435, which means that they would have a 5-seat majority in the House after starting with just a 10-seat minority in the House. That is an extraordinarily crappy result. In the Senate, the Republicans look like they are going to be on the losing edge of this one. Basically, the entire Senate comes down right now to Georgia, where it looks like there will be a runoff between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock. Arizona, not all the votes are in because apparently all the votes in Arizona are counted by a single blind nun working in Mozambique. And so we have to take at least 7 years to count all the votes in Arizona. And the same thing holds true in Nevada. If you have to ballpark the outcomes of those races right now, what you would figure is that Republicans, in order to gain control of the Senate, would need to take 2 out of those 3. Republicans, I think, may still take Nevada. It looks as though they're going to lose Arizona. And that runoff with Herschel, we're going to get another Senate runoff in Georgia, this time featuring the extreme.
By the way, it looks like the results for Democrats in Nevada is improving, and there's a chance we might actually get that Senate seat. Small chance. I think it was like 800 votes behind Lexit. Do we actually have the results for that? Can we look at that right now? We'll do it after finishing the segment.
Extraordinarily flawed candidacy of Herschel Walker against Raphael Warnock in an off-year election where Brian Kemp is not on the ballot to drag Herschel Walker up ballot. These are crap results, guys. These are bad results. I'm not going to sugarcoat stuff. I'm not going to pretend that this is a wonderful evening for Republicans or even that it's a good evening for Republicans. It was a garbage evening for Republicans last night.
I don't like spite-based politics. I despise spite-based politics. It leads to bad politics, it leads to not motivated people, and I think it's bad. I think it's bad. But feels good still. I feel that tiny tinge, that tiny tickle, bottom of my throat, at my heart. I appreciate it. Republicans are engaged in a civil war. Ron DeSantis will eventually, or Ron DeSanctimonious, will be forced to hit back at Donald Trump, who is seen as the main culprit of these nonsensical, crappy results, using Ben Shapiro's words, for the Republicans. Whether Ron DeSanctimonious can beat Trump in a primary in the Republican Party is yet to be seen. A lot of people have stepped up to Trump. A lot. And every single one of them have been knocked down when it comes to inside the Republican Party. Will Ron DeSantis be able to take the torch from Jeb Bush when it comes to Republicans challenging Trump from Florida and beat him? I'm not so sure. We have yet to see Ron DeSantis tested outside of Florida. We haven't seen him run a primary in Iowa, or if he can appeal to the people of Michigan, or appeal to Pennsylvanians. But we'll see. Because I think it's almost guaranteed that Ron DeSantis runs at this point. And according to the schedule and the rumors, Donald Trump's supposed to announce he's going to run on November 15th. That's right around the corner. So we're going to see a bloody, bloody, bloody Republican Civil War. And that's fantastic for us. Terrible for them. Picking up another W.